Hi Sam, welcome,
Hey,
welcome.
Matt.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, really well, thank you. Really well. Well, thanks so much for coming on to talk to me today on This Week in Clinic. So, This Week in Clinic is a series in which I talk to a different psychologist every week, talking about what your week in clinic has been like, any reflections that you've been making from that week, any take home tips, so any useful tips or skills that you've been working on with people that the people that are listening might also benefit from, and also how you've been looking after your own mental health as well, because obviously that's really important in how we look after ourselves. So we'll be chatting about that today. This is our third episode in our second series, so it's a delight to have you on, Sam. And just to say, so I'll let you introduce yourself in a minute, but Sam, you and I trained together. I'm not going to count the years ago,
No, no.
uh, but it's so lovely to see you. And obviously now you work with refugees, you work a lot with trauma, but you also have a great newsletter for busy working women. You're writing a book, which is very exciting. So yeah, I'd love to hear about that too. But I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself.
So thank you so much, Nat, for having me on. It's a real pleasure to see you. And yes, we trained together a long time ago. So I guess my expertise is in refugees with PTSD, and I've been doing that for a long time now. So I treat refugees with PTSD within an NHS clinic, and I do lots of training and teaching of other clinicians and supervision from, Ireland to Iraq. So it's really exciting work, but can be pretty hardcore at times. And I guess in response to that, I started writing a bit more generally about psychology. I felt I was learning all these amazing things, as we did do in our training, right? We learned all these incredible things. I thought it would be nice to share that in a way just for people to use in their everyday lives, whether they have a mental health problem or not, just kind of practical psychology for kind of busy women who don't have time to read, the 600-page tomes. You just want something while you're on the tube or standing in the queue in Tesco and kind of managing all the maelstrom of thoughts and emotions we all have. So I started writing something called the Mind Minute, which I send out every couple of weeks, though have been very remiss lately. I'm going to blame it on global pandemic. And so it's just, the idea is you can read it in under a minute, and they're things that you can practice very quickly. So they're kind of just ways of building up some good habits. And the easiest way to build up habits, of course, is to make them easy and manageable. So that's where that came from. And that kind of has morphed now into a book called Stressilient, which is a word I've made up.
I love it.
Yeah, and although I think now it's Stress Silly, but anyway, and it will be published next year by Fourth Estate. So I've been working on that as well. So I guess the two parts of my work is, one is a kind of very niche expertise role in PTSD in refugees, and the other part is the kind of lighter part, which is about kind of spreading good psychological ideas.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Sam. And I suppose so. Well, your weeks must vary hugely, I should imagine. But reflecting, I guess, on your last week in clinic, however that may have looked, and maybe your clinic from home, even if that's still how you're working at the moment. But what kinds of things have you been picking up on, or have you been reflecting on from your week last week in clinic?
Well, I have been going in actually, because I see my patients in our clinic, and been working with PTSD presentations and, some quite difficult things. And I guess what I've been thinking about is how much, well, first of all, how much, even if it's difficult, I really enjoy it. Not in a way that it's like it makes you happy, like, chocolates make you happy, but it gives you such meaning. Like, it feels like you're doing something that feels very meaningful. And I notice when I'm in clinic and I'm doing that kind of therapy work, that you feel very in the moment. It's very interesting because the rest of the time our minds wander and up here and there, but I really do feel in the moment in that. So I guess I was thinking also about burnout quite a lot, and how actually I think we manage that very well in our team, and that is because we're very close. We share a lot with each other. We don't all, bottle it up and not say when we've had a really difficult session. And so I suppose the broader things I've been thinking about is actually, and which I will write about, is that how do we use, I feel like I learn quite good things about managing burnout, but actually they're really helpful in my home life as well. And I guess no one really teaches us how to manage when we are carers, whether you're a psychologist, right, and that's your job, or you're a carer for a parent with Alzheimer's, or you're a carer for a young child with autism, or you're just looking after people in some way. We're all doing that in some way. You're a paramedic. Maybe you have that role in your office unofficially. How do you deal with all that stuff that comes to you? So I've been thinking about that rather than kind of the actual clinical work. I've been thinking about the effect on the carer.
Yeah, and I like what you said there at the beginning, that even though the work that you do is incredibly difficult work and I'm sure very challenging, that there's also a great deal of meaning to doing that work. That in the work that you do, you feel a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, that and I can relate to that as well, and this real sense of being fully present. And I suppose that's true for our clients as well. It might be an hour, like maybe the only hour in the week, where you're so focused on that task, that moment, figuring things out, as difficult as they may be, that it's an incredibly important time, actually, perhaps for us as much as the people that we're working with. But then I suppose what you're also saying is the importance of the whole context around that, which is, when whatever we're doing, that we feel that we have connections to people, that we feel supported, but also we're quite mindful of how we're doing, and we're managing the burdens that, I don't know if we want to call it, but maybe that's not the right word, but we're managing all of the things that we're having to deal with on a day to day, like this burnout idea. It's sort of that complete overwhelm, isn't it? And how we sort of, think about that and how we manage that. And that's not always a straightforward recipe, I suppose, but something that we maybe have to get to grips with over time. So yes, so lots of different ideas in there that are very helpful. And I suppose, thinking about that, and maybe it's not necessarily what you've been doing with your clients, but maybe some of these other things that you're mentioning, but, anything that you think is a very helpful sort of, I don't know, takeaway tip or message or skill that's come out of some of those reflections for you, and that the people listening might benefit from as well.
Well, I definitely think there's something about, it's our job. We do this, but as I say, I think that everyone is struggling, especially, I think probably a lot of women our age, we've got parents who are aging and small children. So we're kind of in this midlife, we're these sandwich carers, aren't we? And I think, number one, being able to accept your emotions about that. I think there's a lot of guilt about feeling like, I don't want to go round and see my mum or, my auntie who's ill, and I don't want to kind of play that game with my kid that has no narrative structure and that's been going on for like I don't want to do it. And I think just accepting all those difficult emotions and not labeling them as good or bad or negative or positive, and just saying they are what they are. And when you're not fighting with those anymore, then you can think, okay, well, even though I don't like it and I might not want to do it, what's important to me? Maybe it's important to me to be a kind of parent who is present and is interested in what their child is doing. Not all the time, right? We're not superhuman, but maybe for the next 20 minutes or next 10 minutes, I can really engage in their odd game, right? And maybe I could just ring my aunt who's a bit sick and for 10 minutes and kind of be really present in that conversation, because that's a value I have of kindness or connection. So I think kind of going beyond the emotion and the judgment of the emotion and the fighting the emotion to go to values. And I think takeaway, I would say, that helps you sometimes really get there is something I've been thinking about, is this idea of kind of, I call it, it's like kind of psychological version of putting your oxygen mask on first. And I think it's a self-compassion exercise. And I think it's from a guy called Chris Germer, and it's called Giving and Receiving Compassion. And it's where you breathe in, you get into a kind of rhythm of breathing, and you envisage breathing in compassion for yourself and breathing out compassion for the other. So it's about kind of giving to yourself and giving to other. Now, I am normally, me, I kind of, and I wrote my thesis on self-compassion. I would have been all very suspicious of it, a bit too alternative. But actually, I really think the science behind so many of these things now is really robust, really good. And I've tried that, particularly I think it's helpful when you're in those difficult caring situations. Sometimes we have difficult clients, sometimes we have difficult conversations with partners, that just to be able to kind of breathe and have this idea of breathing in compassion for yourself and breathing out compassion for the other is actually a really helpful way of being able to sort of stay in that moment, to not be overwhelmed by what's going on, and to kind of get in touch with your values. So I'd say that was quite a good takeaway experience, and it's something I've been practicing a little bit more than I might have done, and I, to be honest, have forgotten about for ages, but I think it's a nice thing people at home could practice.
Okay, so let me just try and understand that as well as I can. So I suppose, are we saying that we might notice a moment where something's feeling pretty difficult, a frustration or an irritation or a fear or whatever it might be, and an urge perhaps to avoid that, or not do it or fight against it, whatever it might be, and actually the process of noticing, okay, I'm feeling this feeling, connecting with why it matters. Well, it matters to me to play this game with my son because I really value our time together, whatever it might be, and being able to connect with those two things allows us to sort of take this breath in and sort of, allow ourselves some kindness, some space for that struggle, but also breathe out the compassion to the other person, in as much as then we are able to approach doing that thing for however long it might be. Is that sort of what you mean by that, or is there something else that you might do differently to that?
No, that's exactly sort of what I mean. And so I think it's about a connection of, so I think it's a combination of noticing emotions, labeling, kind of making room for them rather than, trying to get rid of them. Having a moment to kind of then be able to think about what's important, like, what are my values in this situation? And then breathing in some compassion for yourself and breathing out, compassion for the other, who usually you might use this with someone who's suffering, but actually I think that this is kind of a helpful thing anyway. You're just playing with your kid, maybe they're not suffering, but maybe if you are caring for a parent who's got physical health or mental health problems, or they're just going through a really long bad time, there's a real urge, I think, especially in women, that we need to give everything, we need to solve it. And I think we have to kind of feel, it's like, it is a cliche to say you can't give from an empty cup, and it's a bit glib, but it's true. What I like about this, Nat, though, is you can do it in the moment. It's not about I need to go away, and it goes beyond a kind of hot bath and some candles, which fine, lovely. But I think it's a slightly more deeper and profound thing you can do on the job, as it were.
Yeah, I think so. And it's just that, I think it's often that little gap, isn't it? That little space of having a breath can help not to react as quickly or as strongly as you might have done before. And then that's followed up by lots of self-guilt or whatever it might be. And I was thinking, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, the other thing is just, I always find helpful is just saying, this will pass, this too will pass. Like, no emotion lasts forever. It will come and it will go, and it will come and it will go. And I know these things, to me now, they, maybe they seem a bit obvious, but I honestly knew, there was also, before I kind of learned about psychology, so honestly, time in my life, I would never have realized that.
No, I agree. Yeah, and actually, the thing I was thinking about also was about when when my clients come to see me, and maybe when your clients come to see you, that there's a bit of compassion in there, isn't there? That actually it's not always the most pleasant hour of somebody's week. But and actually often when one of my clients might say to me that they hold no value for themselves, or they're really struggling with their self-worth, and I quite like to remind them, well, actually you've made it here. You've taken quite an important compassionate step just to come and see me today, even though the things we're talking about are not easy things to talk about. And so sometimes Absolutely. It is also having difficult conversations as well. That can be really a helpful tool for that, I think, as well.
Yeah, and I think exactly, and it's not a lot of these quick things, they're great, but they do need a bit of practice outside of the moment. But I think they're nice to feel like you have some influence on how you respond in that moment. Because overwhelm is feeling like you're swamped and there are no choices.
No, definitely. And I like that. And I think amongst the kind of longer, fancier skills, or journaling practices are lovely, and self-care practices are lovely, but absolutely, I think we need the little 3-minute skills, and actually one of the things I often recommend is like a little 5-minute audio that I often say to people, practice this, because if you have no time for anything else, hopefully you can grab 5 minutes. And so I think even though these things might feel, I don't know, simple, I don't think they are simple, actually. I think I'd agree they take some practice, and we can feel resistance against them as well. But I just think having these little tools, these little kind of things we can insert into our regular kind of busy lives, so important.
I think ultimately, if you've got time to go for a wee, you've got time to go and do a little self kind of care practice, you can hide in the loo and do it, right? If that's what it is, right? So if you've got time to wee, you've got time to do it.
I think we'll use that as our headline for this talk. So.
It's true, you can hide in a bathroom.
Yeah. In fact, I love apps for that. Sometimes I say there's like a CBT app, and I say you can go and do it in the loo.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe that is the modern therapy room.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, some people have very helpful books in their toilets, I've noticed, or signs. It's kind of your little private zone that you can go in and catch your breath. And
sometimes it's all going mental around. You just need to get de-escalate a situation and get out of there. You can just go and breathe, and no one will wonder where you are, right? So it's fine. So if you can do that, when your mind says I haven't got time to do it, you just have to notice that is what your mind is going to say when you try and do anything a little bit tricky. You can just notice it, thank your mind, and hide in the loo.
Yeah, I love that. I love top tip.
That is what I have reduced.
We did. Well, we need it, especially if we've been like having kids at home and work. I mean, literally, the toilet has been a bit of a sanctuary, hasn't it? And if we can just grab that few minutes to do that, it's nice to have a little thing to do whilst you're there. So yeah, that sounds great. And how about you, Sam? How have you been looking after your own mental health? Well,
hiding in the loo.
Hiding in the loo.
Pretending to go for a very long wee. So I think there are things for me that I can't walk. Well, I go into work one day a week, and that has helped enormously. Usually I try and go, if I'm working at home, try and go for a little walk, even if it's 20 minutes, just 10 minutes before I start working. So a sort of separation for the end of the day. And so these things help me kind of bookend my day. So I start like that. I always get changed. I always kind of, put on shoes. And I think at the end of the day, I put away all my stuff largely. And then I think often if you've got kind of, I can leave my NHS job a bit, but, I was thinking, I should be writing about this, or I should post this. And I just say to myself, no, I make a list of, I think of 2 things I can prioritize. And I just really set my boundaries around that. And, so I watch TV a lot, but I think that I need that time to kind of decompress. And so that's one thing. And then I've done it a little less this time, but in the first lockdown, I was drawing a lot. I really love to draw.
Okay.
And that really helped me kind of get out of that. As psychologists, we're so verbal, aren't we? Think about everything in words, and and I just think that really helped me kind of get out of that bit of me that is evaluative, and our brains are like that. They judge, they evaluate, they compare, they reason. It helps being in touch with something else. And I wish I'd done more of it this time round, but I've just,
What do you like to draw, Sam?
Well, I'm trying to, I draw little cartoons that illustrate my newsletters when I have time to do that, or I like to do little portraits. But, not brilliant. And it's something I used. Interestingly, it's that idea of flow, of being in something where it's sort of, you don't notice time passing, and it's hard enough that challenges you, but not so hard that you're out of your depth. And I have to say, I don't know whether other people would agree, but I feel like those things that I used to feel when I was much younger, and I do those activities, have really gone out of my life now, because I don't prioritize them in any way, because there's always a really good reason to think, no, I need to go to Tesco. I need to put wash on. I know, but unless no one's going to give you permission to do it. You're going to have to say, no, I want to do that. And I'll put the washing on, later tonight. You have to take responsibility for that. And I haven't at the moment. So I think those things, I think exercise, I think kind of just unwinding and setting, I really think it's about setting boundaries around your work.
I mean, you've been a great role model to me, Sam, because as you well know, I've been harassing you to come and talk to me on This Week in Clinic now for probably about 6 months. And you kept saying, sorry, no, I'm writing a book, come back to me in like 6 months' time. And I was thinking, wow, Sam's got really good with her boundaries. So I admire you.
Oh my God, no, I had to write down, Nat hates me. Nat hates me because now I'm not on her thing, and I'm not doing it to April, and I let her down. She'll never speak to me again. It turns out you are. So, like it did. That's the only boundary I've set for about 6 months.
No, but I mean, I'm persistent, so it was fine. And actually, since I have to say, since the weather's got better, I've now been forcing myself to go in. I forced myself because it's much easier for me to stay in the house and never leave. But I've been forcing myself to go and sit outside in the garden to have lunch or to have a cup of tea. And I mean, it's raining right now, but when the sun's, because it's got so much lighter and brighter, I just notice even if I go and sit outside for half an hour and eat my lunch, I come back in just feeling so much better. And like you say, it's sometimes just these small, like the loo break. Sometimes you just need these little pauses in the day. But you're totally right that no one's going to do it for us. We have to give ourselves permission, and sometimes a bit of a nudge along the way as well. So
exactly.
Well, it's been so lovely to speak to you, Sam. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. So the book is out next year. Is that right?
2022, yeah, crazy.
Are you going to be giving us some little snippets as we
I will
go along?
Absolutely, some little snippets. And I will, but in the meantime, if anyone's interested, they can come to my website, which is www.sheminds.co, and not UK, just .co, and you can sign up for my newsletter there, and there's some articles there about how to use some practical psychology tips in everyday life. So that will be that's there for the moment, and I'll add bits from the book in due course, I'm sure.
Brilliant. Great. And I'll reference that at the end of this as well, in case anyone missed that. But thank you so much, Sam, and I really hope that we get to see each other soon, or speak again at least.
100%.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.